Psychotechnology
Live.
Live.
Woo! I really
So,
gotta be careful with, are we psychotech or psychotechnologies? Like I'm already like being relaxed and slang about us.
yeah, I don't know. I always forget the name of the channel too. I just want to do Psychotechnologies, and that's all I want to do. And I
Right,
resent that I have to do other things that are not that.
right.
Um, yeah, so last week we talked about suffering, and this week ostensibly we're talking about no self, but I want to like go back and clarify some things and
Yeah.
sort of expand on it a bit. So we talked about moving towards suffering.
I said
And
that. This is me. I definitely said that thing. You want to
Yeah.
move towards suffering, which sounds like a terrible idea.
So yeah, so it does sound like a terrible idea, and I think sometimes it is a terrible idea, and sometimes it's a great idea, and you just have to know which one is which. What
Oh
is.
man, you just have to
And
know, or you have to learn maybe.
yeah, so I think that it would be nice to start to expand on this and like sort of go in and try to be able to tell the difference of when is it that it makes sense to move towards, I guess, like suffering or danger or things you don't like bad things, let's say, and when does it make sense to move away from it? You don't want to always be running your whole life from any small thing, but you also don't want to be putting yourself in situations or doing like being in unnecessary suffering as well, or danger. So I'm thinking,
Right.
yeah.
So there's got to be a way to clarify which one's real danger, and which one's just like self-generated misery, suffering.
Well, yeah. So I think like there's danger, like moving away from danger, right? Like because there are definitely times where something is happening. Like if you're driving a car, like you want to be in control of the situation, and sometimes that means like turning when your car is steering away off. Like you want to turn into that to regain control. Or you want to speed up or slow down, or you want to speed up maybe to like clear the intersection before the thing happens, and sometimes you want to just, but like a lot of times you want to just stop and pull over to the side of the road and like let whatever is happening, and you don't need to be involved in that.
Right. If you're driving and suddenly you're feeling dizzy, you can just pull over and you don't have to. There's no driving maneuver that will definitely help you with your dizziness. But if you pull over and wait it out, maybe it'll just clear.
That's the driving maneuver that you want to pull over to the side. But also if you're like if you're on the highway, you can't just stop, right? Like you want to also be aware of the flow of traffic around you. But there should be a shoulder, but maybe you're on the wrong side for the shoulder, whatever. Like you still got to kind of got to make that decision of what you're going to do. And I think with and that would be like danger, but I think the same principles probably apply to danger, to suffering, to challenges. That sometimes you're going to accept challenges, but you're not going to accept every single challenge that comes across you in life, or else you're just being controlled by challengers. But you're also not going to shy away from every single
Anytime
challenge.
Someone says, "I dare you," you're like, "Heck yeah."
Yeah. But like sometimes you should say yes. You should be like, okay, I'm going to take this dare. And sometimes you should be like, no, I'm not going to take this dare. This is dumb.
Right. So you can definitely have an unhealthy relationship with challenge.
Yeah.
And I one of the to branch into Enneagram territory for a moment, one of the 9 personality types in Enneagram is sometimes called the challenger. And they're just a person who often leans into the like, how do I resolve this situation? I'm going to try challenge. Or I'm confused. I'm just going to try challenge. I'm excited. I'm going to try challenge. I'm bored. I'm going to try challenge. Like there's a person who just turns to challenge a lot, and that can obviously get pathological because there's a part of you that keeps saying we need more challenge and we need more something to fight against. And
for me,
there's a benefit to rest and there's a benefit to challenge.
Yeah, for me, my journey with rationality, which I don't think this is true for everyone, but just it's true. I think it happens to be true for me. Like there was a lot of like challenging going on, like me challenging others and me being challenged and trying to stand up to and like be it.
Yeah, I had I sort of at one point occupied the like strong skeptic. Like you're wrong because you're Deepak and I have no idea who you are, but you're anti-science and so you're wrong. And I occupied that place for a while, and then I did some personal work, and I took my epistemics to a bit more humility, and I was like, well, I don't really know who he is, so I shouldn't really have an opinion unless I go do some research. And that was the more healthy position, which allowed me to then explore and get fruit from many, many odd and strange things in the world. So like reeling back and being sharply aware of what I do know and what I don't know is a really healthy move.
Yeah. And to me, it's interesting because I did come up to that place a lot from the challenges, right? Where it's like I'm having like a debate or an argument with someone, and then like I don't want to lose, so I can't say anything that is incorrect. And if I don't know if something is correct or not, I can't say that. I could say like I think, or I'm skeptical, or like, you know, you can do that hedging, but you can't do this is incorrect and you don't know if it's correct or not, because then you're wrong and you lose all credibility. And you lose the challenge essentially, which is to be right.
Classic people challenge thing. Right, but so back to the suffering for a moment. With the so I said there's a benefit to if you move towards suffering, right? And clearly there's a lot more nuance there than just find any suffering and move towards it.
Right. And this is the thing I kind of want to explore a little bit, because it did feel like we left it a little bit of guys, if there's any suffering, just move towards it.
Right.
But yeah, like limitations and context on that.
So I definitely want to say like personal experiential suffering. Like if I think last time I used an example, if you are procrastinating, you have an assignment, you find yourself, you've all done this, we've all done this. I procrastinated for a week, and then on the last day, I like rushed it and I did it, and I was like, why didn't I just do this a week ago and then take the whole week off? In fact, I got to a point where I took the whole week off and then I rushed it last minute. But it was a skill to be able to like commit to myself, no, I'm going to take the week off and then I'm going to rush it, rather than beat myself up for the whole week.
Yeah, so I think most people, when they push things off, they like, if things are in the future that they have to do that they're not, like it doesn't fit in, like it doesn't fit in with their life exactly, where they don't know, oh yeah, this is the schedule, or they feel comfortable around it, like they're going to cause themselves misery.
Right. So there's a good question here. Which part is actually the suffering part? And maybe that'll help us also clarify which, like, what do you want to be moving towards? So, and there's this tricky thing here. If what do I make object of when I conceptualize my experience and my story? So if my assignment has a lot of spreadsheeting, I have to look at the spreadsheet, I have to work in the spreadsheet, I have to like make it work. And sometimes my computer freezes and sometimes I hit a button and weird shit happens and I'm like, and I don't like this.
Interrupted flow states are the worst.
Right. So where is my suffering here? And I'm like, I don't like spreadsheets, right? So there's some suffering caused by there's like an anticipatory suffering, like last time I sat down, and remember the past, present, future. So there's a sorting thing here. Last time I sat down to work on a spreadsheet, I remember the pain and frustration I had of working with it. And so now when I think about sitting down and working, I have this anticipatory discomfort around, oh, if I do that, it'll be bad in some sense. And so the suffering is, it'll feel bad, right? And that as an object of possible, like I imagine it'll feel bad, is the object that I am flinching away from and causing me to procrastinate.
You're imagining that it's going to feel bad,
right?
And little do you know that it already does feel bad,
right? And in imagining and like going, oh, maybe I should do it. No, I don't want to. And then getting like, maybe I'll watch some more Netflix for an entire week.
Yeah, maybe I'll watch some more Netflix to calm me down so I can handle the feeling badness of procrastinating.
Right, but the whole time I'm feeling this like, I shouldn't be doing this. I have things to do. I shouldn't be doing. And occasionally I dip into like immersion in Netflix in whatever I'm watching, and I like forget. But then like a couple moments later, I'm like, I shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and then even the Netflix, like maybe you get like you enjoy it a little bit, but then you get interrupted by your
own. I'm watching Netflix and then I'm on my phone as well because I just can't. It's not distracting me enough, so I need to be on Facebook.
Yeah, so you need to be on your phone
and then that doesn't work, and so I try Reddit, and then like I realize I'm not watching the Netflix, so I switch to YouTube, and I'm not watching that either. And there's this whole dance of like, I'm just trying to run away from this damn thing. That is how bad it.
Just
I think it's gonna
more stimulus so that I don't have to deal with the fact that I'm avoiding something.
Right, and then I'm like, oh, I should go eat something, and then I'm like, maybe if I have a shower, and like this whole dance of, if I had just, moved towards that experience. So like, oh, if I imagine doing that spreadsheet, now there's two things here. One is maybe I have to do that assignment, right? And so that's a non-negotiable for reasons that I believe, right? I believe, and I genuinely think I have to study.
Yeah, we're not judging if you have to do the thing.
Right. So one of the things that makes this a complicated conversation is that if we take that, well, actually, you don't have to. You can run away and live in the forest. You could do that, but given that you live in
the spreadsheet or live in the forest.
Well, as in like, and there are no spreadsheets in the forest, but given that we've like already ruled out certain possible worlds, I have to do my assignment, right? I'm living in an experiential world where I have to do my assignments. Given that premise, now I'm telling myself like I have a bad thing.
Well, that's the thing is I think like that might be like that is a potential like weak link, right? Where I think like if you you have to do the spreadsheet and then you're not doing it, there's I guess the way to say this is there's a part of you that has decided that you don't have to do this.
Right. Or the correct thing is to put it off for a bit longer in some way.
Or you put it off, like you need to think about it or process it more.
Mm-hmm. And there is a benefit to taking it on a walk and thinking about it while I walk and that sort of thing.
Yeah, or maybe you're not in the right state of mind and you've been doing a bunch of other things and you really do need to sit Netflix and chill and then at a later time do the assignment. But
I would advocate for the like ritualized process of I wake up, I go for a walk, I drink my coffee, I get home, I sit down at my desk, and then I start working. It's got a whole procedure, and as long as
to like get you into that like
get me into the mode or
mindset.
Right, and that's a really good, as psychotechnologies go, that's like a really good process.
Yeah, rituals is very, very like endemic or important, I guess, part of the human experience.
Right.
Yeah. So I think one of the ways you can get by this is with ritual. But I do think like for me it's when I'm avoiding the thing, I'm moved back to, or when I've had this aversion to like a not good relationship with it, I try to think back to why am I doing this in the first place? Like what is motivating me? What is
right? So you've done so I've already decided I have to do the assignment, and you are.
I'm saying you haven't decided that, because if you had decided that, you would have already been doing it.
Right, but you're making this movement of I'm reminding myself I'm doing this assignment because then I will complete my degree. Right,
for whatever reason. Right, so like it's a chain backwards, and then you stop when you want to do the assignment again, or when so like you move backwards because I want to get my degree. Maybe that's just I really want to do my degree, and then that's motivating, and they do that. And if that doesn't work, then you move back. Why do I want my degree?
Right.
And then, you get to like, I think a point like, what are you doing with your life or something?
and hopefully a good direction, either by doing something else or by staying with the degree.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing, right? Like you got to see, because you've made choices of like, this is how you're living your life, and you have to do this thing that you don't want to do. That's like clearly an aversion to it. And this is where you can think about your life choices, right? It is also like you can also use this as a like a deflection or avoidance technique, where you just think about your life choices all the time. You're not living your life. But just like on a sort of very basic level of remembering why you're doing this in the first place, and like rethinking, and then like really like seeing that choice as real as I'm wanting to do whatever I'm wanting to do, like whatever it is the reason I'm doing this, and this is the thing that I have to do. and like weighing those.
Right.
And then both places should be updated. Like that choice that you made in the first place, it should be like, okay, now it's actually harder than I thought it was. And the thing that you're doing now is actually, this is more motivating than I thought it was.
Right.
And you get this back and forth, or something just happens. And as you're doing this process, you just get an insight. And then that's sort of that.
Right. So it's a little bit more complicated than just find suffering and move towards it. There's this whole dance here of like, what is my motivation and what is the suffering, and like a nuance about all of these details. And is there a story behind why I don't like spreadsheets? Or is there, maybe I don't like sitting at my computer and there's a different solution of I need a standing.
Right. It might be that, like, or it might be, look, I don't want to start the spreadsheet because, you know, there's this other thing hanging over, right? Like my roommate's going to come in 10 minutes, every 10 minutes and bother me. Right. And then like, it might just be that, like, this is the reason I don't want to do it. And then you can go be like, hey, roommate, I need to have this block of time. Right. And then once you have a block of time, now you're not interrupted, then, you know, you can get into that flow state. There might be a million reasons, but that's what to me is like, I'm always looking to explore the reasons and to understand what's going on.
Right. And so part of that is moving towards the suffering. And like, as I move closer to, you know, I open the spreadsheet on my computer, I'm about to do it.
Yeah.
Then I notice how damn uncomfortable I am sitting in my chair. Like I move closer to it, and then I've learned something from that. Yeah.
So I think, like what you're like, I think like I'm seeing what you're saying now differently, or I'm hearing what you're saying now differently.
Yeah. I feel like I didn't clarify and nuance well enough.
Yeah. Let me reflect it back, see if I've got it more. It's you're moving towards the suffering, not necessarily like the activity per se.
Right.
So if the spreadsheets, if you don't want to do the spreadsheets and suffering, it's not move towards the spreadsheets and do it, although that might be a solution sometimes. It's move towards like, what is the actual suffering? Like, what is the thing I don't want to do?
And particularly suffering is often dangerously, like always possibly caused by your internal experience. Like there is some part of my internal experience that says I don't like spreadsheets. And that is the cause of, that's where the suffering is. The suffering, spreadsheets will or won't be in the universe, independent, you know, resting on computation, resting on atoms, independent of my experience and my existence. Spreadsheets are, but I don't like them, right? There's something here saying like, this is suffering in me. And so I need to move towards that part. And that's an internal experience.
Yeah. And I think that's like much more accurate, and that's like a much more clear way, I should say, of and I think this is that idea of life is suffering. It's or like in the Buddhism, like that suffering exists. It's not that the external things are suffering. It's you're suffering, and that suffering is internal. And you know, you've mapped your suffering onto externalities, and you know, I'm not like dissing that or whatever, but it's like notice, like insight this, that it is an internal, and you have mapped it, and these are not the same.
Right. So Daniel doesn't have a problem with spreadsheets. I do. And when he sits down to spreadsheets, he's like, this is fine. I will just take statistics. And I'm like tearing my hair out. You know, the internal suffering is in me and with me, and not Daniel's, and not in his experience of spreadsheets. And so this whole rubbish is all like, I make my own suffering somehow. Yeah. And there's some learning about that comes from obviously insights from meditation, from experiential knowing, from moving towards them. I recognize, oh, I am the one causing my suffering. Right. And and I think that's sort of like the sum of it, of what it is. Right. Or at least like on a basic level, I think there's like, we're just sort of, this is like, I guess, more philosophical or descriptive of what's going on versus like leading people through the actual experiential side of it, which is right. And so there's something really important to get down to the like moment by moment experience of how I find that suffering. Right. Like when we use the word suffering, it's this huge umbrella for like bad people in the world shoot people, and some people are hungry, but what I really want to be investigating is the experiential suffering on a moment by moment basis that I am having, that my spine is not straight, and there's like a little ache there, and it's a little cold, and it's a little hot, and it's like these tiny things are the same as those big sufferings on a smaller scale, and really on a more genuinely relatable scale to me, because it's about me, right? Me being a little bit cold is about me. The cold is and isn't in the world.
Right, and that you're having, that you're not, that you're suffering from it is the stuff that suffering is within you.
Right.
It's interesting what you did there with when you said like the little backs, like the little pain in the back or whatever, like the little uncomfortable pain that we have throughout the day versus like those big moments of pain. It's interesting because like the rational side for me is very much like expected value, right? So you have a little bit of pain every single day. That's, let's call it one quality's worth of pain. And, you have like a big loss or something bad happens, and that's 100 or 1,000. And you can start to sort of like say like which one of these things is worse. Like if I could solve like a really bad thing, like, getting fired maybe is like 100 or 1,000 or whatever, like what's that ratio between sitting uncomfortably and getting fired?
Right.
You can start to
a general consensus that torture is like the 1,000 paper cuts, whereas the like I chopped your leg off, bad luck. That's a lot less torturous than I pull every single hair out of your leg, and then like I start ripping off bits of skin and then bits of muscle, and that's gonna be a lot.
Right. So there is a trade-off. Like how many times would you?
There should be a trade-off. Yes, we should be able to calculate.
Like how many hairs would you rather have someone pull out before you be willing to like give up a toe or something, right? You can start to, not that calculation is necessarily useful for your life, but but like that calculation of like, well, I'm at the job and the job gives me money, and that money is useful stuff, but it's also unpleasant. Like there is a calculation there of how much unpleasantness am I willing to put up with for.
So there's to branch really briefly into a fascinating bit of Buddhism. There's I think it's called the Brahma Viharas, although I may be wrong. They are described as sort of states of enlightened beings, and there's 9 of them in this particular set, and there's one in the middle, and you have to dig through Wikipedia to find this, where it's like 4 or 5, where it's like the enlightened being feels great compassion to all of their beings, even if he is torn limb from limb. This is the quote: even if he is torn limb from limb, not quickly but slowly and methodically, he will still feel compassionate towards his perpetrator. And that's that's the standard for like greatly compassionate being.
That's the what's like that official title? Is that like
I don't remember because there's 9 of them, so I can't remember the name of that one.
Okay, so that like one I think
highly realized something or other something.
Yeah, I think that's the story of Jesus essentially.
Right.
Not to like
forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Right. Like that's the thing is like this, and I think this is like sort of like, to me at least, this is the thing I like about Christianity is they're saying this person existed, and like like this person existed and he loved you and you should accept that.
I think I've got it wrong. I think they are the Boomies.
In your heart.
Yeah. Okay, they are the 9-10 Boomies. BHUMI. I'll make sure that it's in the description of the chat. And it is the 5th Boomy. It's called the
the 5th. So there's like
4th. Left. Wait, no. The 3rd Boomy. It's called the Light Maker. And the quote is, even if someone cuts from the body of the Bodhisattva, and Bodhisattvas are like very Mahayana, very suffering school. Not just flesh, but also bone, not in large sections, but bit by bit, not continuously, but pausing in between, and not finishing in a short time, but cutting over a long period of time, the Bodhisattva would not get angry at the mutilator. So the light.
I am not on that level.
Yeah, on my good days, I might be getting closer to it. I'm
not me. Like if somebody pisses me off on purpose, I'm already angry at them. Somebody causes me suffering on purpose, I already don't like them.
Yeah, I had one of those for a while, that I'm more offended by the intent to cause suffering than the actual suffering. Like if I see you deliberately, like I see you trying to, like, you make a joke about me and I'm like, oh, that's a joke. Yeah. And then I see you like, you're like, that one doesn't land. And so you try and like cut deeper, or you try and cut me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I'm offended by the idea of trying to cut me. You still didn't cut me, but I'm offended like that you would even try.
Yeah. If I can get to like why, if I'm in the right state of mind, then like I'll be like, why are you doing this? Like, where's this coming from? And then we can like circumvent that. But yeah, that one's hit or miss for me.
Yeah. The like deliberate spite thing, really. I think actually, as I talk about it now, it doesn't feel as bad, but historically used to grind my gears greatly. You would deliberately try and add extra pain because the first pain didn't land for no reason other than your own entertainment. Clearly.
Well, that's the thing, is that there's always a reason. Like they're always doing this from a twisted sense.
Right, and there's a level of depth of my own perspective taking. So if I can't see that they have a reason and I just see that they double down and be extra mean, then, but as I've grown and meditated more, usually I can see a reason. I can be like, oh, they're just upset, trying harder, like their reason has greater depths that I can perceive, and I can be compassionate towards these things.
I find that for me as well. It's like if I can in the moment know that there's a reason why they're doing this, then I can usually be more compassionate. Right. But also like I get a lot, like very little patience with that. So somebody's doing that to me, it's like, whatever. This is not this is not what we're talking about.
Right. That's possibly an interesting topic. Other people, for a future psychotechnologies conversation, like experience with other people, of other people, and making peace with other people. But so we were at suffering, right? And we got to this point where we just said, I cause my own suffering, right? I realized that because I don't like the spreadsheets, I am the one making the fuss and causing the suffering for myself. Right? Yeah. And I think it's also important to validate, like it's okay. Like obviously you shouldn't be causing yourself suffering, but everybody does this and this is normal. Like you're not a terrible person or anything. Right. If you do this, that's why these psychotech exist. It's because these are very common things that happen to people. Right. And so this is a bridge. This I cause my suffering is a bridge to the third school, right? And the third characteristic. So we've got impermanence or change. We've got suffering, unsatisfactoriness, and we've got no self, right? Because who's causing my suffering? I am. What? But there's what? So I've come all this way. Everything is changing all the time, and so I shouldn't cling to it. The thing, realizing that I like some things and I don't like some things, is causing me suffering, and there's a way to do less of that. And then who is this? What am I doing this all for anyway? Who is the I that is having the experience? So who's the I that's causing me suffering? Like how does that even make sense, right? Right. What? And so here we are having. So we're transitioning there, right? So we're transitioning from the suffering where we realize that we cause ourselves suffering and we want to know what's going on. And so I think it's I suffer because things change. And so I suffer from change. So we did the change, we did the suffering, and now it's the I. Who's suffering? Who's causing the suffering? What is that? Mm-hmm. The answer is no self. No self. Oh no. If there's no self, why am I suffering? Yeah, if there's no self, then there's no one suffering. So it should be fine. Except that I do suffer, so I have a self. So you're wrong. Right. So there's this great confusion here. Like, what the heck is going on? Why am I suffering if there is no self? Yeah. And particularly as we start to investigate for the self, right? An important place to start here with no self is actually, I had a lot of difficulty understanding the no self thing. I was just like, what are you guys talking about when you say make the big deal about there being a no self and there being a self and there being a and part of the problem was that and this is rarely talked about, and this is why I want to mention it. Psychologically, if you have a weak sense of self, to dissolve it doesn't really you actually need a stronger sense of self before you can dissolve it, before you can release your sense of self. Okay. Because if you have no self to begin with, and people are like, there is no self, you're like, I guess, yeah. Rather than like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like it does happen when you're feeling very like not like you don't have like when you don't have that strong sense of self or who you are, and you show up in a place and you kind of get like outshone, I guess, by everyone else or by someone else. Someone else has a very strong frame or a very strong way of being, and then you get kind of subsumed in that, where you start to doubt yourself and don't know what's true, what's not true, or like what do they mean, what are the words, and you can get lost in that bigger like the biggerness or whatever, the otherness.
Right. So I had quite a long confusing journey where I eventually realized I needed a stronger sense of self before I understood the value of dissolving it. Or like I sort of did it in different orders, and like I dissolved it first, and then I was like, what was okay, there's no self, I guess, but then I had to go back and make a sense of self and like enjoy a sense of self before letting it go from further.
Okay, so how does that work? Do you want to start from the beginning of like becoming a self and then realizing yourself and realizing you want to dissolve it?
So there's a language puzzle here, because you've got East and West, and in Western psychology, we talk about the ego and the healthy ego, right? And you can probably just map that directly to self. A healthy self, a strong, healthy, happy self, and then having a no self. The epitome of the Eastern, the Buddhist meditative, is to completely dissolve the ego and dissolve the self. And if you look at the maps of transpersonal psychology, Stanislav Grof, and also Maslow, near the end of his life, proposed another layer. You know, everyone knows Maslow's pyramid. We've got the safety, food, oxygen, and we've got like rest and community, and like climbing up to like more self-actualized needs. So what is not known about Maslow is that near the end of his life, he added another level on top of his pyramid, and he called it self-transcendence. And the similar sort of level in transpersonal psychology is this like growing beyond yourself and into an experience of other people as well. And so there's something nifty there, that where these maps are pointing to like beyond the self, but Buddhist culture doesn't really, it's not in the mainstream. First you just dissolve the self. That's a huge step.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I think there's a bunch of different ways this can go. I think there are like the people do refer to like weak egos, and then like that dissolvement being as a no self. But I think that's not the one that we like, and that's not the way we want to do it. We want it to be like in a healthy, like productive way. And so like let's sort of walk through that. So you have like no self. So like my kid, when he was born, he had no sense of self. And now like he's 4 months, and he's like really like building up that sense of self. Like he knows when people are looking at him, he knows that he exists, he does things, he gets shy, he gets whatever, like he blushes, he has things he wants, he gets excited when he gets them. So like that would be like him developing that sense of that ego, like that he knows he exists, and he has this like, I guess, image of him that he tries to like live by or live with or something.
Or so we start to build maps, mental models of the world, and then we start to like it's good to be happy, right? I built that into a mental model, and then I strive to be happy all the time. I strive to meet the model that says good to be happy. Yeah, okay, just gonna be happy. Gonna try and get there all the time.
And it's like that's the thing. I think what ego is, when it's a sense of self, it's like it's our model of ourselves versus our actual self. And I think it is important to have a model of yourself, because if you're modeling the world and you're not modeling yourself in the world, then you're going to be absent, or your map of the world is going to be incorrect. And so I would say, like, I think that would be like kind of the definition of ego that we're dealing with. It's like on an intuitive level, are you mapping yourself within the world?
Right. So there are a few things. There is the on the experiential level. As I can sit and meditate, and I pay attention to the breath, and what I tend to notice sometimes is there's a particular sensation in my experience that has this little tag attached to it, like, oh, that one is me, or that one is mine. And previously you've mentioned ego syntonic and ego dystonic. Right. So certain experiences feel like they are mine, and certain feel like they're not me or not mine. And so, for example, I'm speaking now, so it feels like I'm speaking, and underneath me, there's some sensation in my body that is just like underneath. It's not really mine. It's just kind of there. And so those sensations don't have the like strong belief that they are myself. Whereas the voice is like, oh no, I'm the one talking. This one feels very much like it's myself.
So there's like this, so sometimes when you're doing things or having experience, it feels like it's you, and sometimes it feels like it's not. And so if you had a strong sense of ego, if you had like a good healthy sense of ego, it would feel like both those things are
a
like
lot
that.
More. I would propose that a lot more of those sensations would be saying, this is me, or mine, or these are all me.
So like all the things that are happening, or all the things that are happening inside me, or things I'm doing, like that would be within your worldview of yourself.
Right. So even and obviously we start in meditation of like a random assortment of thoughts in our experience, and then we start growing into we start with like the body maybe, or like the being is sort of the self, and then we go to like, well, the body is a bit more of the self, and then we go to the awareness is more of the self. Like if it is Daniel's birthday and I say, hey Daniel, here's a birthday cake, happy birthday, then I get to experience, see Daniel smiled, I get to experience Daniel smiling and saying, it's my birthday, right? And some part of me, if I have associated myself with just the body, then I had to give up the cake to Daniel because it's his birthday, right?
Yeah.
But if I have associated the self and the me with the experience that I'm having, that I'm sure I give Daniel the cake, but I see him smile and say, oh, thank you for the cake, right? So I get to have that as myself in some
right.
The experience that I get to witness is more of the self, or even like the witnesser is more of myself. And there's various ways in which, as we meditate, our like structure that grabs us and says, this is myself, can kind of move around and be more associated with the witness or more associated with the experience. People who have done big MDMA trips will be like, but I'm everyone. And like,
right.
What the heck do you mean you're everyone?
yeah. Let's push that off a little bit, because I'm still wanting to
it's got a huge
but yeah, we'll get there.
Right.
So what you're saying with the birthday cake, I think is exactly like correct, where it's you're when you give someone a birthday cake or a birthday present or whatever, you're making a choice that you would rather give it to them than to have it yourself. So you'd rather and that's then like there are, let's say, like intangibles. Like a cake is very tangible, but giving a cake is very intangible. And so there are a lot of these things that are sort of like, I guess, like benefits or reasons why you would do it, or things that apply to a healthy ego of why you would give someone a birthday present or birthday cake. And then that's sort of, I think, like that transition like to a healthy ego is, I would rather give the birthday boy a birthday cake than have a birthday cake by myself.
So I realize I want to make a distinction between two concepts. One is healthy ego and the other is strong ego. And strong does not necessarily mean healthy. Healthy would include healthily able to have an ego and healthily able to let it go, whereas maybe a really strong ego starts branching down like the narcissist spectrum.
Right.
So if you can imagine the birthday cake scenario, but I'm like a raging narcissist, and I give you the birthday cake and I say, this is the best birthday cake you've ever had. I made it. You'll love it because I made it, because it's the best. Like, I'm the best at making birthday cakes. Like, I've given you the birthday cake, but it's all about me. Right. And I have a really strong me. It's me. Aren't you glad I made you the birthday cake?
That would be like a strong, unhealthy ego.
Right. So it's an ego that is so
like,
strong that it's
happy
starting to
that
get unhealthy. Absolutely.
Yeah. Versus like, oh, I'm so happy that you're happy about the birthday cake.
Right. So if I can be like, I made this amazing cake for you. Here you go. I hope you love it. Like suddenly it's about you.
Yeah.
I can and a healthy there's this crazy idea of a healthy narcissist, right? I can make you feel good as well because I recognize good egos and I can like instill with you, Daniel, what do you think of it? It's good. Come on, you have to try it. Tell me it's good. Like, you know, and I can like play up and make fun, make joy out of like encouraging you to like bring your ego out.
Right.
If I have that as a healthy skill, hopefully.
Right. And I think you need a certain level of like strength for your ego to be like, to even like conceive that I could give you a birthday cake and that could make you happy. Like you have to have a certain level of ego that's
right. I have to believe that I can give and that I have the power to change how Daniel feels by giving him a birthday cake.
Or like to take up the time or whatever to like make this gesture. And
I am worthy, like Daniel values me enough, like many beliefs here.
Yeah. And I think that is, yeah, like I think like, yeah, you have to have a certain strength level of ego in order to like do good things, right? So it's not, so when we use the word ego, I think like for me growing up, ego was always negative. Like, oh, if you have an ego, then that's bad. And I think that is incorrect. I think that there is some level of ego that is really important. And yeah, and you don't want it too strong, you don't want it too weak, you want it healthy.
So the thing I see of that is unhealthy about well, there's a few things. One is if you are told, and every kid gets told this, don't have such a big ego sort of thing, chances are the part of you that was a healthy ego got that message, and the part of you that was unhealthy ego went, they weren't talking about me, they were talking about, and so you receive the message in the exact wrong way. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
What happens.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why healthy ego is very important is because like, you know, people say things and like they're true or not true or whatever, but you're always the one interpreting it for yourself.
I actually wonder if it's part of the journey making for people. Like people have to get the exact wrong advice or like receive it in the exact wrong way some of the places along the journey.
Yeah, that's part of life. Like you're never gonna, everyone makes mistakes, I think. And yeah, and you will do things that are exactly backwards. And sometimes that's important to do, and sometimes I think it's just a mistake.
Right. So the mistake of getting the information in the wrong way. The other part, there was another part about healthy kids and egos. Right. So then what happens is we learn this message, don't have an ego, right? But what some part of us kind of wants to have an ego. And so what we do is we put it in our shadow and it like it comes out in toxic ways.
Yeah, we put our shadow, or we just do it and then lie, or we don't do it and then suffer those consequences.
Well, in many ways, we probably still need to have an ego for a while. Like, I still want to consider myself important. And so if I can't show it in healthy ways, I end up showing it in unhealthy ways. Or like, you know, you're having a bad day and I come along and I say, me too, I'm having a worse day. Because, and like, that's not helpful to you or to me. But like my ego hasn't come out with like, oh, I can help you. It's come out with like, I can join in and I can I can be more important. Here's a place in which I'm allowed to be more important.
Yeah. I mean, we all know that stereotype, and there are like funny skits like that where everybody's just one-upping each other. But yeah, like I do think like I was gonna actually move back to the kids, where if you see like kids are like, some kids are always like clamoring for attention in like this like unhealthy kind of way, and it's always makes me think like they're not getting enough attention at home, like they're not being built up as like a healthy ego person. Not that I'm blaming parents or anything, but just like as like an FYI.
You know, it can be complicated. This particular child may have had several siblings, and so there was just a difficulty navigating the world and having enough attention for all of the people because there were too many children to take care of at the same time. Or whatever. Like I think there's a lot of ways that can go down.
But yeah, like I do think that,
in fact, the child could have lots of attention but never really acknowledge or accept that they're being paid attention to. And
I'm not saying blaming the parents or anything.
Yeah.
I'm saying there's
a schema therapy talks about schema beliefs. So if I have a belief like I'm not important, then it's sort of it takes root underneath. No matter how much people pay attention to me or not pay attention to me, I hold on to the root. It's very hard to uproot I'm not important. Like I can get lots of attention, and then next week I'll go back to my root of like, oh, but I'm not important. That was a fluke. That was a one-off. People don't.
Or they're not really talking to me, or you're sitting there thinking or judging them, right? Like, oh, you're saying I'm important, but don't you know that like people aren't important or something? Or
how could they believe I'm important when I'm truly the least important?
Yeah, and then that person might be trying to give you love, but they haven't gotten to the root of the thing.
My favorite version of this is the imposter syndrome version of this. I can't be an imposter. Only I've never done anything of worth to make me an imposter.
Yeah, there's like a certain arrogance you need to have to like. There's a certain arrogance you need to have to like claim that you have imposter syndrome. But and not arrogance, sorry. There's a certain level of ego that you need to have, right? Because you are experiencing imposter syndrome, and you're now one of those people that have this condition. And that's like, yeah, I mean that's true. Like you need a certain level of ego in order to, start to doubt your own level of ego. But yeah, I think that is true. Like there is, okay, so like getting back to the no self thing. So this is what the self is. It's like when you're there and you're showing up and you need to, so the way at least we're conceptualizing it is that you need to get to a certain level of ego where you exist and you're important and you're valid and things you do happen. And then like that would be, and then like you go through life with this healthy ego of I'm a person like everyone else, and sometimes I do good things, sometimes I do bad things or whatever.
Right. So to bring an example from a previous episode, I want to climb a mountain, right? Climbing that mountain, that mountain will be there with or without me on top of it. But the fact that I want to climb the mountain makes it meaningful to me. And so I need the healthy enough ego to put the meaning into the mountain, to climb up the mountain, and then to get there and be like, I did it. Like, that is healthy process. And then I need to get to the top and be like, well, I enjoyed this, but this was only meaningful to me. I'm going to find a different thing that is meaningful to me to do.
Right, and you can be proud of your accomplishment.
Oh yeah.
And that's impressive, and like you are allowed a certain amount of like ego-ness of, hey, I did this thing and it's so cool. Look at these pictures, right? And I actually think that's fine. Like that is how people should be when they accomplish something. They should be proud of it, and that is the level. Like that is the level of ego that I think is important. Yeah. Okay. So we've reclaimed ego. It's not necessarily bad. Guys, you don't have to not have one. It's okay to have one. Just, like within margins, like don't be a dick. Don't think you're arrogant. Like don't get arrogant. Don't be better than other people.
And it is very tricky because from the inside, sometimes you can't see the mistakes you're making until later.
Yeah.
And so definitely be compassionate to yourself about the mistakes that you're making when you find out about them.
And you are going to make mistakes, and it's going to be you because that's what the ego is. And that's okay. Everybody makes mistakes, but also like pay attention. And if you make mistakes, like if you do bad things to people, like you have done something bad to someone, like you do need to make reparations for that. And that's part of having an ego. It's like repentance and being able to make up for what you did, and responsibility, things like that.
Right. So we talked with the other two characteristics. We talked impermanence is connected to Theravada, suffering is connected to Mahayana, and I haven't actually mentioned yet Vajrayana, which is a third school of Buddhism, is connected to the no self understanding.
Okay, so let's say the ego's there, and then the ego gets let's call it like in the Western, it would be you would get to self-fulfillment or something. So the ego wants a thing, so you've climbed your mountain and you feel good about yourself. Like, oh, I finally climbed that mountain. Mount metaphor is the hardest mountain, and I did it, and I feel really good. And now you get this release. And then what happens? And you transfer into no self. How does this work exactly?
Right. So there is a good handful of meditative experiences that happen, right? And so I'm sitting and meditating and watching the breath, and then it stops, and I realize it's impermanent, and I have this insight of impermanence, right? And then a week later, I had the insight of impermanence, and a month later, I still have had the experience of impermanence, and there's a way in which that then like falls back into the memory, and that's fine, and forevermore, I'm like, well, I saw it. Obviously, I know what impermanence is, but I'm not still having. I only had. And so there's a type of spirituality of I saw. And then there's a different type of spirituality of I see.
Like peak experience, I think how we would call that. Like you had a peak experience, like when you're on shrooms, you DMT and you see the DMT interdimensional aliens. Like you've had a peak experience of that, but that doesn't mean that you're living with the aliens in every day.
Right. So there's a different type of spirituality that I see. I still see. And that it's not that I meditated on a cushion and I had an enlightened experience. It's that I am still having enlightenment right now.
Yeah.
And that is difficult. That is a greater journey. First journey of spirituality is to see. Second or longer journey is to like continue to see.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about. Well, I guess let's maybe we should talk about like what is the peak experience of no self, transcended from healthy ego, and then I guess like what is that snapshot, and then how is it that we live that every day? And I realize that this is hard. So. Because like this is like whatever, like this is the third school, this is like the higher level, and this might be beyond us, but maybe not.
This is I feel like I gave poorer treatment to suffering as well, because I've got a little bit more there to learn myself, whereas I feel like I know impermanence pretty damn well. But suffering like still recurs on me, and no self, I'm still like finishing up many bits and pieces of it. But so you have a strong sense of self. You're like, I want to climb this mountain. Climb the mountain. You're like, I did it, right? And then okay, story time. I used to play Ingress, and if you don't know what Ingress is, it's a capture the flag game. It's the one that came before Pokemon Go. So
augmented reality, where
augmented reality. You take your phone, your GPS, and you wander around and look for a statue or a sculpture, and then you capture that location, and then you walk around and you find another one. Anyway, Ingress has a bunch of features of making triangles. So you get 3 points and you connect them, and then you make a triangle, and then you make bigger triangles on top of them, and like in general for more points. Cool. And so when I was playing Ingress, there was like a local team. It's funny the way that we get to know each other and play together, and like I live in this area, so I'm like, yeah, it's definitely, and you get to know the area because you walk around a bunch. You can drive around, but you tend to walk around. And so there was this, and part of the problem is there's another team there who is also trying to link points and make triangles. And you guys
have like rivalries and like gangs and stuff.
Absolutely, and you have to destroy their structure in order to build yours, and they have to destroy yours in order to build theirs. Like it's a competition.
Oh, so like but this is in Australia, so you guys like
it's all around the world.
Your pet kangaroos against each other?
It's all around the world. Every city you go to will have Ingress players in it. People argue.
So in Canada, yeah, we would like send our pet beavers at the other team.
Right, yeah. So there's the blue team and the green team, the teams in Ingress, and it's very secret agent themed. Like we're all the secret agent in the underground wars, and it's fun. It's lots of fun. Anyway, so one time I was hanging out with my team, or I was talking with them with a lot of text chats, and I decided I'm going to go out and build a big triangle over the entire suburb. It was quite a big thing. You got to go to all of the points and like clear out the ways in between, and so I do that, and I set out at like 9 p.m. and as 10 p.m. rolls around, I'm like, oh, a little bit further. 11 p.m. rolls around. Oh, I'm nearly done. 12, 1, 2, 3 a.m. I get to the final point and I complete my giant triangle. And I go, yes! And I'm on a golf course at 3 a.m. that you could public walk onable, but it's like no one else around. It's dark. Everyone else, the whole suburb is asleep, let alone the fellow players. And I've done something that absolutely no one else cares about.
Right. But you feel proud of your accomplishment.
Right. And then I'm like, yes. For about 5 seconds, then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go home and go sleep in bed now. But there was this, right, I could do it, and I did it, and I felt the accomplishment, and then I went home and went to bed and got on with my life.
Yeah.
So that's like
a peak experience.
Peak self, right? And it's difficult. I had to walk around. I had to visit places. I had to like complete little stuff here and stuff there, and like do things in sequence. And it was fiddly. And so it was this arduous several hour long puzzle that I completed. And so I felt great, and like it was fun. So that's but the thing that I cared about, the thing that made meaning for me in that moment, then didn't matter to anyone else. Someone else the next day came down on the bus and destroyed what I had made, and it was, the entire world is the playfield, so lots of people can do stuff.
Mm-hmm. So that accomplishment meant so much to you, and you put in the work, and then you got the reward, and you enjoyed it.
And maybe I even tried to tell my teammates, and they were like, "Yeah, that's cool." And I'm like, "No, this is more than just
how hard I worked." Yeah, like give me the recognition I deserve. Like, recognize my ego and
right. And there's like a grief there of like, oh, no one will recognize what thing that I invested in and cared about and built.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those. The world is kind of lonely when you realize you're the only one that cares about exactly what you care about and the exact nuance that you care about.
Yeah. That's
right.
That was an unfortunate insight for me.
But there's something important here, because I care about it.
Right. So, and is that something?
Yeah.
It is. If you have a healthy ego, it is. If you have an ego, it is, and if you don't, then it's not.
Right. And to the extent that I do have an ego and I do care about doing things in the world, I'm gonna go do things in the world. I'm gonna have a great time. I'm gonna try them. I'm gonna like.
And we need people to do things in the world, and that's why ego.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the reasons, I should say. Yeah.
And then I need to recognize that I only did them for me. Like, maybe I fooled myself that I was helping other people, but I did them because I wanted to. I did them for me, and it's a beautiful part of my journey to have this strong, healthy, free sense of self that I can put on a whim towards a task or a project, and then relinquish if I don't like it.
That's beautiful, Elliot.
That's the no self that I can. It matters to me, but so what? No one else cares.
So is that no self? Because I think that is.
So that's when it matters to me itself, and when I try and push it on other people and learn that it didn't matter to anyone else, that's.
And you're going the wrong direction. Yeah.
Right.
I think there is the direction like where you do the thing, you get the accomplishment, and then you feel good about yourself, and then you can like dissolve your ego.
Right.
You don't need it anymore because you're already. I don't want to say you're accomplished, but you're already like the like you don't need that image of yourself as much because the real thing is there, and you can like your real self is always there and is always doing things, and like you can just hang out with that person instead of your image of yourself. And to me, I think that's what no self is. It's not to recognize that. It's not that you don't exist because like you're physically here and stuff. It's that you're letting go of that image of yourself and you're just being yourself. It's not really yourself. You're just being, I guess.
So it's worth saying that we probably cannot capture all of the depth of the no self insight in conversation.
But also we didn't capture the suffering or the
But then we can give some clues and some nuances.
This is just like a basic introduction, talking about it and like sort of expanding it out in ways that like I see this as much more of like a interface where people will be like, oh, that's so weird, but now we're saying this in a way that it sounds nice and feels nice and things like that. And like and people can start to see the value there.
Right.
So I think that's what it is to me, at least like, or at least like on this basic level of like you're like, because like like when you have the ego, when you're constructing a mental model of yourself, like anytime you construct models of things, that's not the thing, it's just representative of the thing. And that definitely is important at times, for sure. and you don't want to live your life where that's permanent. You want to, right? You don't want to live your life where the model of yourself is this permanent thing that you created when you were 13, and now that's just there forever. Because
and when I work with people, I occasionally, like, we stumble across a part of ourselves that is younger and decided to be a certain way, and I'm gently offer, like, hey, do you still want to be doing what a 13-year-old planned to do? Like,
yeah,
maybe you can upgrade to an adult perspective of like what you actually like. And often these things like hit a like stunning opening realization of like, oh, I can choose to be different. I can let go of this younger, less insightful version of myself who had an idea about how the world worked.
Right. And it's not to knock 13-year-olds or anything like that, right? Like it's the opposite. It's to kind of like celebrate that, where when you're 13, you create these images of this world or things that you want to do, and people forget to do that as they go through life, because they kind of make a commitment to something, and then they get stuck in that path, I think, a lot of times. And and it's really important that you're always doing all these things all the time, but you're always re-exploring yourself and looking to see what are your goals and what's your direction, and what kind of person are you, what kind of person do you want to be, what kind of person could you be. And like I think like there is a sort of a coalescence with the ego when you accomplish something, and or when things are miserable. It's either way, right? Or you're the other one is when you're like hit rock bottom. You can like let go of that image of what's like, you let go of the image of this is the kind of person I am, because you know that it doesn't work. Like that's not real, or that's not a good way to live life. And then you let go of that image and you just start living. And I think that's much more. There's probably another level that I'm not aware of yet, but like I think that's much more like that is a good healthy version of a dissolution of ego, or dissolution of self, really, where you don't have a self, you're just alive doing things, and that's just what you do.
Right.
I also want to move into this abstractly as well, like philosophically.
So there's a couple other bits. So there's in the way in which we will sometimes as incredibly complex beings, we will take an identity, like I am a man, right? And I will
gender is a big one nowadays.
Well, I will contract my great possibility of brains kind of endless to I am this, right? Or I am a punctual person. I take the great possibility and I contract myself down to a sort of more limited identity. And that is there's a way in which we do that, which is an illusion. And we say, and the self, right? We say, I am. We've made a self, the punctual self. I am the punctual self. And if I'm not punctual, what, like it's like or something? Or like
identity,
who am I? Like it's broken frame. Like
who am I that I showed up 5 minutes late?
Like to go into another identity, I'm a vegan, and if I accidentally eat a piece of meat, like, oh no, crisis of faith.
Yeah.
What if I like the piece of meat? What if it's very tasty? And I go, oh no, like who am I really? I thought I was a vegan.
Yeah, now I'm the out group all of a sudden.
Right. And I saw one recently with the same thing with sexuality. I am a this type of sexuality. Oh no, now I'm questioning everything because I had an experience that I enjoyed that was a different type.
Yeah. Let's double click on this a little. So we got I think like you were saying, like where people do intertwine their ego with something that they do. So
right, like, some concrete object, or some maybe subtle object like punctuality or veganism. So ideology,
business,
way of being. Right, I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm a person who belongs to this religion. I'm a Christian. I'm a Buddhist. I think like good examples are like vegan and CrossFit.
right? How do you know if someone's a vegan or a CrossFit? Is they're always telling you.
Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Yeah. And I'm not just a joke for the vegans and CrossFit people out there, but I think there is some amount of truth to that, where there is like there are groups that tend towards this, where they're always talking about this thing that they're a part of, and like that becomes their identity.
There's a range of relationship to identity. So the first time you become vegan, you might tell everyone, and then after a while you tell some people and not others, and like eventually you tell people where it's relevant, and if you're not eating food with them, you don't have to bring it up in conversation.
Yeah, you could go the opposite as well, like where you have a shame around it and you don't want to tell, like a thing happened to you and now you have to feel like it's a secret that you can't tell anyone because they're not going to like it or whatever, or you're going to be embarrassed.
And then that's my special identity that you can't touch. I'm an artist, but I can't tell anyone.
Like, nobody knows me. Like, it's like this secret thing, and then it's a secret, but it's a thing that happens that everybody that like is actually like more common than you think it is. But everyone's keeping it a secret, so everyone thinks that it's uncommon.
Right, and this is a dance we do with identity, particularly. And then we get to a place where I can just have my identity, and I don't have to tell people, and so I'm a vegan.
Or it comes up. I think the healthy is that when it makes sense to do it, you do it. When like you're skillful around it.
Right, and then there's probably a layer after that where I dissolve even being vegan, and like I probably eat vegan, but I don't even think of myself as a vegan.
Yeah, maybe you just
this just is now.
You don't want it, because you don't want to, versus like this thing that you've committed or constructed around yourself.
Or like only cool people are vegans, and therefore I must be vegan to be cool. Like fall away. And
this is a big thing, I think, with the ego, is like, well, people will create like groups. So it's like, are you in the group, or did you get it? Do you not get it? Like, I think the identity politics is plays very heavily into that, with which group are you a part of, and like now this is what you need.
Right, and so this we do with our sense of self, where we say this self, myself, really belongs in the entrepreneur bucket. I am an entrepreneur. Yeah.
So I think I think there is a healthy way to do that. And there is a healthy way to do that and an unhealthy way to do that. Like I do think, like with the entrepreneur stuff, especially, like there is like this block that people have, where they're like, oh no, I can't be an entrepreneur. Those are for other people. And like, there is something where I am an entrepreneur, even if I fail, or even if I can't get started or self-motivated or whatever, like you can still try to do, like, you can still, like, an entrepreneur is just someone who tries to do that. A successful entrepreneur is someone who succeeds at it.
I have a question for Daniel. So if I think of like all of the variety of identities that I'm an entrepreneur, every time I was always very delicate with like picking those, but even though I had said those, I still felt like I wasn't many of the times.
And you have imposter syndrome, which is very common for entrepreneurs.
It's not that I have imposter syndrome. It's that despite being in the rationality community and calling myself a rationalist, I didn't really feel there's some way in which I was like, well, I'm not really. And an EA and this type of politics, or a vegan, or even though I was in these communities and felt these things, I'm not vegan. I feel like I should say that because I keep using it as an example. Not actually vegan, but there's a way in which I have, even though I would say these things, some part of me would always hold on to, but I'm not really. And I'm wondering if you have had. Have you really felt like a strong, like, this is definitely my identity, or every time you've declared it?
Okay, so it has happened. That's obviously an illusion, because like you're not an entrepreneur, meaning like this is who you are as a person.
So at the time you had it and it felt real, and then in retrospect you feel it's an illusion.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I guess it's possible if you to go like, I'm a runner, and like be running, and then like stop running, and then be like, maybe I'm not a runner. But while you were running, you were like, I'm a runner.
Yeah, the EA thing is a big one for me, because I felt like I was an EA, and then I felt like I was EA, and then people started defining and being like, this is what it means to be EA, and then I was like, well, I'm not that. I was like trying to be that, and then I was like, no, I'm not really that.
I think I'm gonna ask people. I'm interested to ask a whole bunch more people. Have they, when they declared an identity, did they really feel like they were truly central to it? And maybe like thinking of like era psychotechnology, right? The people who really declare an era, do they feel like it's their identity, or do they feel like they're putting on a mask of that identity?
That's a good question, actually.
Because I wonder if some people just really like, no, I am an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur. Or if they always, some part of them has always known that that's just a label that I have put on it.
So I find when people do that, okay, it's interesting because you just connected two different schemas for me. So the entrepreneur stuff, when people are like that, it's usually like temporary. So they're going to be like, I'm this, and then that they're focusing on this for a while, and then they build that up, or they get used to it. They do the things they need to do, and then they can relax and let go, and it's still there. And so, let's say they're doing it healthily, like that would be kind of the healthy way of, I guess, going all out. And then entrepreneur becomes like a thing, like that title becomes like a thing, like a descriptor of you versus you. And but yeah, like sometimes it's like, no, I am this, like and you're in that embodiment, you're in that archetype, you're in that vibe, or whatever, that in that identity, and you like really, like, you can't tell the difference between yourself and the identity.
I suppose it's possible to carve an identity that is infinitely complex and therefore does perfectly describe me, but then it would be undescribable outwardly. I would just know I am the me. I am the many complex facets of me.
Yeah. I feel a lot of times the way with myself, where there is sort of a self-image that I have, but it's like there's no way I could talk about it. It's way too ineffable. But like parts of it I can, and like sharing understanding will share that.
So I guess my curiosity is, and maybe, when I pass through my, I guess I'd call it developmental level, Keegan level 4, which is the ideology identity level. I guess I always felt like I had one foot out the door, even though I was like trying to identify with some of various ideology, one foot in, one foot out. And I wonder if there are people who feel really like in it, like they don't have.
I have felt very in it at times, and I definitely recommend this. Like, like don't force it, right? Like if there's an ideology and you're like, yeah, I like that, but it's not really, like, it doesn't fit me, then like that's not you. Like you could like pretend and lie to yourself, but that's not going to end well.
There's a way in which like I can feel my typical mind mentality is saying, well, everyone always feels like they have a foot in and a foot out. But now that I've been talking about it, I'm like, I should go ask people, because maybe that's not the case.
Yeah. You've never felt like you were like totally in a thing?
So this is a little bit more nuanced, but I have never felt probably that I 100% fit a category.
Like you've never felt that, like there's never been a time where you're like, this is me,
right?
Like, or maybe not 100%, but
maybe it's more like I truly belong to this category, and I see a scarcity when I think of that.
It's not that it truly, that's not really, I think, how it lands. Like for me, the experience isn't that, oh, I belong to this category. Sometimes it's like that, but it's more, but that's me from the outside of playing games mostly. It's more that, oh my God, this is me. And like there's no, you're just in the story. Like there's no, like sometimes I'm in a category, right? So like recently I've been learning a little bit about astrology, and I'm like the astrology thing, I'm like, oh, like this describes me, like I'm in this category. But it's like it's like very playful and stuff. It's not
okay, right. So interestingly, I think what's going on here is that there's an exterior perspective of like this is the category that I can observe that I fit into, and then there's an interior experience of this is me. Like from the inside of the category, I go like, oh yes, yep. but I can also like sort of look outward from the outside at myself and be like I don't really seem to fit in the center of like I'm not quite a nerd.
And this is interesting because like like this shouldn't be I'm gonna bet
on the inside I've always been a nerd. Like my interior is like
right. So when someone's describing, like the first time they were describing, or the first time you heard a description of that, you weren't like, oh my god, like that is my lived experience. Like this.
No, but I've been like gravity towards the category of like intellectual and like scientific and understanding and knowledge and like computers and technology. Like there's a whole cluster here. But then obviously that's a very big cluster suddenly.
Right.
Anyway, this is a side branch of
that's something that we'll try to see if we can find later, because this is a very like this experience happens to everyone for at least something, right? Like it's but usually you don't notice it. That's the thing, right? Because like you're just in it. And if the category is well, and like if the thing is well and it describes you well, then you're just in it and you don't realize that you went in it. You realize that you were always there, and now there's other people that are talking about it.
I guess it's like feeling tired. On the inside of feeling tired, you have like a fuzziness or a fogginess or like there's sort of sensations, and then as soon as you realize, oh, this is tired, then you're out of it, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm out. I can see what tired. I can see that there's tired here, but you're not like in that fog discovery.
Right. Like you're like the fog is like the mental map and the experience lay on each other in a way that there's not a lot of there's no edges. Like it's just the same thing. And so that's what the experience is like. So yeah, there we go. Like tiredness would be, if someone points out that you're tired, you're like, oh my god, I'm tired. Like that experience, I think is the same thing when like let's say when people are coming out where they're like it turns out that they're gay or whatever, like there's something that they were growing up with, and then later they realize it was a different identity. It will like map on one-to-one at first, and then they realize as they grow up that they're actually every experience is unique.
So I just did in my head in the same way that I was giving the tiredness example. They're like, I don't know what's happening. I'm a bit foggy, and someone saying to me like, hey, are you tired? But the same like instance of pattern for like gay, like I don't know what's happening. I see these bodies, and then someone going like, that's gay, and me going, oh, it's gay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a
but it has to come across in like a way that fits you, right? So if they're just being insulting about it, it's not.
No. Like in the genuinely, like just pointing out, hey, you look tired there. Like, hey, you look like you're gay. Are you gay?
Yeah, obviously these are different orders of magnitude, right? Like
and different entire patterns. But yeah, the same.
But like, the realization is, yeah.
Yeah.
See, this is what I do with psychotechnologies. I'm always trying to find the microcosm so you can understand it, and then. And then this pattern is going to exist in a large way, in ways that you can't see past because it's too big. But if you pick it small, you get at least senses of the pattern.
Right. Okay. So that's one version of self, right? That there's a self that connects to identity, and we tie ourselves up in all these knots with identity stuff. There's another bit of self that is motivation or drive, right? So if I want to go for a run, but I also want to sit on the couch. There's two selves. One is the lazy self that lies on the couch, and one is the running self. And I've talked about this previously, the relaxing self that enjoys rest, and the like motivated self that enjoys exercise. And there's
or the spreadsheet example. Yeah, where you want to do the spreadsheets, but you don't want to do the spreadsheets.
Right. And there's some confusion here about which one is the self and which one is the other self or something. Because
which one is the self and which one is the shadow, right? So the answer is both yourselves, both your shadows.
Yeah, they're all self and they're all shadow in some way.
I'm a genius.
Getting to meet them, like it's easy to say that and harder to actually go through the journey to meet them and really deeply understand them and integrate with the many parts of yourself, so that like, and this is my little hand symbol for alignment, right? Like that we're pointing the same direction and we're moving in the same way.
Interesting, because I always think of alignment like this.
Oh yeah, but like, so from that to that, I guess, yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, so I mean that's another discussion. But okay, so I see this as different. Like I'd like to give some context for this. I see this as different but also the same. So there's like if you're using like internal family systems or parts work or whatever, there's like different parts of you that are showing up and doing different things. And so when we're saying healthy ego, like the way we were talking about it is that there was one.
Right. And this is a very Western psychology sort of has the like there's one of you model.
Sure.
Internal family systems hasn't been around long.
Whatever. I think we're kind of getting to the point where I don't think you can use.
You think there's a transition?
Western is this? Like I think we're
fair enough.
There's already enough, like I guess, competition of it, marketplace of ideas.
I would say the what was the Disney movie? Inside Out.
Inside Out, right?
Literally, everyone has a model of parts work, and we're like, oh, this is becoming just like you can think of yourself as having parts of motivation.
Yeah,
and this is super important for psychotechnologies, heaps of psychotechnologies.
Right. So there's a like I guess there's a whole class or ways of doing things where you have internal conflict. So it's not, hey, I want to do this thing, but there's these other things going on. It's I am internally conflicted. There are parts of me that wants to do this, parts of me that wants to do that, and that could show up like a bunch of different ways, and also in ways that this descriptor of it wouldn't make sense to that person. But we use it anyway because it's actually a really good arena to figure stuff out in. So often what we'll do is we'll just create it. We'll say like, okay, there's this thing that's your anger, we're calling your anger, and there's this thing that's calling your motivation of this and this and that. And then now you have all these things that you can start interacting with. And they can start interacting with each other. And like that is a super useful. Okay, so here's the thing. That is a super useful like modality and like way of being, and like it's not even a modality. It's like a class of modalities or something. It's like a whole approach to things. And that is super useful. But I do think people sometimes take it too far, and they go, we are all parts. Like we're not one. Like we're not a. Like we're never like this is what psychology says, is that I'm not a person, there's multiple things inside me and we need to like whatever. Some meditative pathways, depending on which schools you are in, will talk about unification and becoming right. And I think that's sort of the goal, that's sort of the overarching goal of this, is that you're having like some problem where there's internal conflict, and you break it down into the pieces, and then the pieces interact with each other. And then as they interact with each other, and this is almost metaphorical, but also not metaphorical. As they're interacting with each other, they build relationships with each other, like the internal, then you kind of switch perspectives to the internal, like your internal connections are connecting with each other. And then you kind of lose that perspective of the multiple parts, and you're just a person who is thinking about something, and like you go through this like transition. And I think that's important. Like you break when you're like having these problems, you break it down into parts, and then you put the pieces back together, and and if you've done it right, they are organically or naturally, non-coercively, non-decolonizationally, whatever, like all the words, into this like this being that just is alive and is just doing stuff.
Well, there's something
that's like I think another way of getting to this no self.
There's one way of looking at the mind, that is that all of these parts of us hold different bits of motivation. So some part of me is keeping track of whether I need to drink and how thirsty I am, and some other part of me is keeping track of like whether I need to eat and how hungry I am, and some other part
so
of
like like and you can do the different brain parts, like the thalamus I think controls appetite, and then or the hypothalamus. I'm not good at neurology. I hate neurology.
Not touching reality, only talking about psychotechnologies.
But whatever, like there are legitimately different parts of your body that
so potentially
different hormones regulate different things. I don't need to name them all.
Right. And me as the conscious entity is hopefully mediating between all these parts of me who are vying for my attention and like, wait, before we do that, we need to eat something. Like there are, and something's got to sort out the confusion of the between what is being viewed in this moment as parts of me. Otherwise,
right. So the things are misalignment, right? Like you have a lot of testosterone, so you're horny, and also you have these ideals, so maybe you want to wait till marriage, and now you're in this like messy situation,
right?
And yeah, so like I think you're in the messy situation. So what we do is we say, okay, take a step back, and we'll just name the different like major players that are going on. So you have your hormones, you've got your ideology, you've got whatever,
Weird social pressures,
you got romance, you got whatever, right? Like you got all these things going on, and
the stress of studying, the stress.
Yeah, like really what's happening is there's a mess, and then you're starting to put labels on things in order to clear that mess up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put the labels on things, and then people are able to talk about the different things as if they're different things. But like, yeah, I think, yeah, like, and that's good. Like that's really helpful and useful and healthy.
Right. So there's an aspect of self and no self work here in terms of recognizing the many parts of self and starting
right. So I think that transition to like when you're in this confused state, and then you realize that there are different parts of yourself, and there isn't a single thing that is yourself. There's just all these various parts. Like right. That people do call that no self, and I think to a certain extent that is a step more no self than you were before, when you were like, oh, I'm this thing and all these other things, and then none of it makes sense.
Yeah, I realize I want to speak up for some of the no self realizations are unhealthy, and
yeah,
like they are half of the equation and not the rest. So for example, if I'm like, well, there is no self, and so I don't need food because the me that is hungry is not self, and then I can get to a place I can stop eating for a while and start deteriorating and losing weight and getting really scrawny, and then eventually I'll be like, wow, this is really not fun. Like, even though there's no self and I'm not hungry, I'm not enjoying this. Or there's no
enjoyment, or the world. This is another thing, yeah. Like the other one people do is they have no self, and then all the things that are wrong with them they project onto the world.
Right.
So they're like, oh, the world is this terrible place, and all these things. And
so
if you were in a healthier place, you wouldn't say that.
The Buddha story is that he tried out the like starving himself sort of thing, and then realized he was so miserable and it wasn't helping to starve himself, and
this one is, to me, like I heard this story as like this was the story before, like right before we became enlightened. Is they had this practice back in the day where they wouldn't eat, like they wouldn't go to look to eat, they would just walk, and like the unconscious would lead them into places where they could get food. And so they used to just do this, like this was a practice, I guess, that whatever the equivalent of monks were back then would do. And
wandering aesthetic.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's probably like a name for it or whatever, but and then like this was like the thing where he was just walking, and he hit enlightenment at that point where he was just walking and he was there, and he's like, oh, this is all there is. And then, I'm not saying the story well because I'm not really enlightened, so it's hard for me to like get that feeling. But he realized this is all there is, and he's like, okay, this is it. Like, this is what life is. I'm hungry, let's eat. Like, that's it. Like, that's a simple, like, I'm hungry, let's eat. And then his disciples left him because they thought he had given up on the path when he had actually hit the realization.
So I know of a different version of a story, which is something like there were deliberate practices at the time to try restrict, like, don't eat anything, or like fast for the purposes of being spiritually serious or whatever. And he did a bunch of that, and then realized how miserable he was, and worked out that this didn't work either.
Both these stories seem true.
Yeah. There's longer versions, and
yeah.
the listener
Like,
is
I
welcome
think
to look them up.
I think that like that's sort of what it is. Like you do the rituals, you do these things, these practices, so that you can gain the insight. And once you gain the insight, stop doing the rituals, or else you haven't really or else you're, what is it, like you've missed the point, like you're not
right. So I would describe that for part of that journey, that was unhealthy. Like he starved himself. That like like
yeah.
there
Yeah,
are other,
I'm not recommending this, but this is also what, like, you lived 2,000 years ago or something.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't have such advanced psychotechnologies back then.
So
and I think that's a big part of it. Is like back in the day, like you kind of had to, not only had to, but like to torture yourself, so like whip yourself or to fast or whatever, these extreme measures would get you to that get you to those insights. It would get you out of what's normal and into those insights. And I think nowadays we're getting better at that. Like you don't have to like suffer physically so much.
You probably don't have to add suffering to. There's already enough suffering going on. If you heard this video, you probably have enough suffering. You don't need to whip yourself to get more of it.
Right. Some people do. I think some people, it's like this is their path.
Maybe. Yeah.
And there is something to that for sure. Like I don't want to discount those practices. Like there is something to that, but yeah, I think there are better ways now.
So other unhealthy self-realization. So there's
yeah, so people get too caught in the IFS framework, I think. That happens.
Right.
Yeah. And then they refuse to like actually coordinate or to be the system. It's like internal family system. So you break it down into like the family's parts, and then you realize, and you do the work so that you build good. Each part is building good relationships with the parts that it's going to associate with. And then as that's happening, it just happens more naturally by itself, and you don't. There's no one part, like they kind of get coherence, and then you're the family, and then that's yourself, or that's the unit, I think, or something. It's something like that. There's probably a better version of that, but but yeah. And I think some people get stuck with this. No self is the way it is. We're all parts all the time, and they won't get to that.
They won't reunify.
Yeah, they won't unify.
So, and there may be a benefit to that, and I may not fully understand it, but one thing that I keep track of is clearly the self kind of formed as a habit. Like there's a reason why it came up. We shouldn't try and just get rid of it, throw it away, destroy it, do those things.
Right.
Myself keeps coming back no matter what I do. I meditate a lot.
Right, because
and then I come back. I'm like, oh, I'm still here. Okay.
Yeah. As someone who's not enlightened, I do believe that like, because yeah, when you dissolve that image of yourself, like that ego, like that, that the image of yourself in the model, and then you just start doing life. Like you're gonna do life again. And you're going to need to think about how things are going to play out.
Right. And so there's something important you said there with like start doing life. Well, there's something of I never stopped doing life.
Right.
And a learning to accept and return to and continue on with life, with the whole of me, including, there is no self, and also, but I'm still here doing stuff, like got to keep going.
Or you can stop. I think that's another thing is that's like healthy. Like when you get like a healthy ego, or like it's healthy, right. I guess.
Hopefully, what falls
you can't just stop.
Like hopefully many things fall away. So in the ways in which you may have been running with the system of society and trying to keep up, and you may just decide to let go and relax and only care about what matters to you in a very freeing way. But these things still do matter, and then enjoy those ones.
Yeah.
So other versions of unhealthy non-self, and I briefly touched on it in video 1, talking about people who jump straight to the no self-realization.
Let's talk about that. So what happens if you go to no self without realizing? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm starting to get these connections here.
So I've like drop snippets of it along the way here. So if I have no self, then if I'm rude to you, it's not my problem. There's no my here to have a problem with it. And
right.
In fact, you probably also have no self, and so you shouldn't be offended. Why are you so offended? There's no self there.
Right. And I do think like when that happens, that seems like a very strong ego. Like I am no self. And if you and like
that's it's in my shadow, like,
and that's like a weird one because like some people do that really well. Where like they've like built this as like a part of their identity that they have no self. And then it's like very hard to find the cracks in it.
Right. Or I would say something like the identity doesn't get along with attempts to help you point out its cracks, and so it dances around and dodges. If you're like, what was that self thing that you just did there when you know what was going on, then it like dances around and like
and I do think that the healthy way is to like be able to deconstruct yourself. So like, okay, I'm here because I need to be here, and now it doesn't make sense for me to be here, so I'm just gonna like let go of that. Or like a lot of like curiosity and like exploring the new requires like you to have a low ego or to have a weak ego, because you're like you need that space for the newness to come in. And so like I know when I'm learning something, it's like I like something new that's interesting to me, I get a very sense of like dissolution of self, and I just become the thing that I'm. At least this is the internal experience, and not necessarily the way I'm coming across.
Turn into a puddle, and then like
it feels like that. Yeah, it feels like where I'm just becoming the thing. Like especially when it's like sufficiently complex.
Right. So is there like a dizziness? Is there like a ungroundedness? Is there
it's just kind of euphoric.
A spaciousness? Oh, there's a euphoria.
Yeah, there's some euphoric, but there is a huge amount of spaciousness. There's a huge amount of it's like a pleasant tingling. It's kind of like an expansion PT kind of feeling.
Cool. Right, and this is how you know that this shift is happening, because you have these particular sensations.
Yeah, like when I'm like, I get this with like computer games, right? Where if like I like playing complex computer games, and if once I'm like in that flow where I'm like, oh, I realize that once I'm in there and I get like command of the controls and everything, and I realize how expansive and how much I can actually do, it's just like this open, like feel good sense of like that possibility space is just I just get lost in that.
Nice.
That feels amazing. I had it a little bit actually the other day. We had this light thing that it's like for like Christmas or something, where it projects light onto, it's supposed to be your house, but we had it inside and we projected on the ceiling, and they had this like with all these little dots moving around. And so I'm like there and I'm trying to encompass all these, like, I don't know how many dots there were. It must have been like 1,000
like dots. One of those green laser things.
Yeah.
Green laser. Yeah.
Yeah. Green laser, but it's
reflective.
I don't know, it's got like mirrors and stuff, so that there's a lot of it. Like it's the same image, it's just multiple. And so it felt like kind of like it's like a poor man's planetarium, where it's just like there was like the ceiling was just expansive and there was all these dots everywhere. And I got this like sense of like trying to embody the dots and like not being able to, because it's just like so far beyond.
That's interesting. So I just got, I don't want to say lightning bolted, but I just there's a Bible story in the Judeo-Christian Bible where God says to Abraham, your children will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sands of the earth, right? And that story I always took to be, oh yeah, the stars and the sand. But I wonder if the intention of that story was to point towards that experience that you're describing of trying to witness when I was a kid in school,
God says try to count, at least like in our tradition, it says try to count all the stars, and that would be like counting your children.
Right. So when I was a kid in school, we sort of, it was talked through this exercise of trying to count the stars. And there's a different experience of innumerability, uncountability by trying to count them than by trying to witness as many of them as possible. That expansiveness in more like I'd say like a right brain spacious awareness style rather than a left brain logical counting style.
Yeah.
I wonder if the original purpose of this passage was to point at that like right brain expansive phenomena rather than the left brain counting one as it was taught in my school.
If I know Judaism, it's probably the intersection of both of them.
But it like, you know, I spent all of my life not thinking, oh, maybe they meant that big expansive phenomenal feeling. And like now I have a new appreciation of that passage, possibly.
Yeah, this would be like a nuance where like you can experience this phenomenon this way, you can experience it. Like you can experience of just that expansiveness, or you can experience
I'd phone a friend on that one.
Realizing how hard that is. Yeah, these are definitely different experiences of, this is interesting. So definitely very different experiences of like expansiveness and possibility. It's like a body high versus a mind high.
Yeah, I'm gonna phone a friend on that one and ask him if he has ever heard of this interpretation of that passage, because surely I can't be the only one. But I'm surprised I've never heard of it now that I've connected.
Look at you! You're pretty much a rabbi, like interpreting the Bible. Like, look at that!
Wow. Well, you know, if I phone a friend and he's like, "Wow, that's a great new interpretation of the phenomenon."
And if it's an old one, then you can just use that. You use that and you say, hey, do you want to experience that? This is how we do it. We could set up a Psychotechnology for experiencing it.
Yeah, and
it's called a Devar Torah.
Yes, interesting. I will. This is cool. I'm excited by this one.
Yeah. Yo, if you do it, I do Shabbos dinners now, Friday night dinners. So if we do it good, then I'll do it at the dinner.
Yeah, if I find an original passage of some otherwise person, I will flick it your way too.
Oh, I can tell you exactly where to look it up, right? It's going to be with Abraham and the stars.
Yeah, I know where the original story is, but that interpretation anyway. So other ways to do no self wrong, right? So in more Indian, the culture of India, they have guru type spirituality, and there's devotional spirituality. So you give yourself entirely to the guru in terms of worship and praise and practice and following the instruction of the guru. And obviously, given the Western world in which we live in, that has the chance to go like crash and bang, explode into.
Also, the Eastern world. Don't do this thing like, oh, like India never had it.
Look, it was never perfect back then either, but it's probably even worse now.
I don't know.
But bearing in mind that,
I don't know. Whatever it is, there are better ways of doing this now, I think.
Bearing in mind that the gurus were probably like our modern day rock stars or movie stars, but back then. And
even so, now, like I watched Sadhguru, and he's pretty much a rock star.
Right. And so we should be thinking of them instead of as like you might a rabbi or a priest or other spiritual figures, more like a rock star of this culture.
Right. So like people say that, but I've been like I grew up in like these communities, and like some of them are rock stars. like there are popular rabbis that people love, and I have this big image of like most of spirituality is conservative. So to think of like rock star spirituality feels they're not like rock stars, but they've got that fame and affluence and and I mean some of them do music as well, but it's more like they're very, very popular and people want to hang out with them. Right. So there's something you can do here when you say, I have no self, I'm going to give all of my being to my guru, which can be unhealthy. And I want to name that there is can be done if you have a good guru and they're compassionate and effective at helping you reach. It's risky. Yeah. You can do it and it can work, but it's also risky. And also the thing I don't like about the system is that like when it does work, then people say it works, and then other people do it, and then it doesn't work. Right. So there's this. Like even that it works makes it bad. Importantly, the way to do it correctly, effectively, is to understand what you're getting yourself into. Whereas I suspect often people
are like, guru spirituality path, I'll just go down that path without really fully understanding the no self, the idea of no self, the like what it is to give up.
The problem is
what are they trying to learn from the guru?
I think like I do get where this is coming from, and like it does, like I begrudgingly admit that it does make sense for people to do it. Some people to do it.
For me, I'm so concerned about the many ways in which it can go wrong.
Yeah, me as well. And I think like ultimately, like you either grow out of it, like the guru thing has to be temporary. Or not, I guess.
Some people stay with the guru for 20, 40 years.
Yeah, I guess
that you know, it becomes a devotion.
This isn't meta-modern to me though. Like maybe you have maybe you do this, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but this isn't the new.
So it's hard. It's very hard to judge from a distance. This is their psychotechnology. This is their religion, their spirituality. To say that they're doing it wrong it's very cautious.
I didn't say they're doing it wrong. I didn't say they're doing it wrong.
Yes.
At least I don't think it.
I've said there is a few ways in which I can see it going wrong, and I would encourage people to be cautious and careful with it. But you know, this is someone else's religion, basically. Like, it may be crazy.
Interesting. Interesting. So you're saying it's someone else's religion, therefore what? Therefore it's protected from like.
Therefore, it is hard to judge from the outside whether there is something good on the inside from a distance.
Right, I agree with that, and
maybe it's really quite amazing, and maybe the people who denounce the guru path are just missing the point, and the people who love the guru path really got it, and like, you know.
No, I don't agree with either of those.
No,
it's the guru. Let's say the guru-guru relationship.
Guru disciple relationship.
Yes, guru disciple relationship.
Yeah,
is one of like that is a game theory equilibrium.
It's a pattern, it's a setup.
Yeah, and I think that's like to say either extreme, like, oh, it's 100% wrong all the time and there's nothing valuable about it, or and you're just getting tricked, or to say that this is the way of going and this is the way it should be. Like, I think both those things are obviously incorrect. Right. There is some benefit and there is some, like, you're paying a cost and you're receiving a benefit. And whether or not that cost benefit analysis makes sense for you, it very much depends on you and the situation and the guru and that. And so I'm not going to talk, I'm going to say like it's possible either way.
Right. So
but I'm talking about like the equilibrium of like on like a systemic level. How does this work as a system?
Right. So
yeah, and in that case, I think we can judge, because we do know game theory. Like, game theory is,
we can look at it from the outside and say this is what seems to happen, and we don't seem to like it. Doesn't seem to have great outcomes.
No, that's why I'm not saying that we don't like it. Well, I'm saying I don't like it. I'm saying I don't like that dynamic, and I don't think it's meta modern. But that doesn't mean that people shouldn't do it, because we're not living in the meta modern world. We're living in the modern world. And
if we're even living in that one,
whatever. We're definitionally living in a modern world. Like, and in 1,000 years they'll be living in a modern world, because that's just how modern it is. Like, that's modernism. It's like what is happening today. Not that I'm necessarily using that term correctly, but this is, I think, how it should be. This is what that should mean in this context. And I think and so that situation, like, each person kind of has to make their own decision. But systemically, this is not how the future is going to look, that we're going to have gurus in that way.
Yeah.
Because it's too ripe for abuse.
So if I start thinking about what can we extract some of the fruit from guru paths, because it worked at one point, or at some, for some people.
Well, it still does work, and I still think that there are people like if they haven't learned, like, if you want to learn from someone, like, that's really good, and you should still do that. And to a certain extent, that is what a guru is.
Right. So when we start talking about fruit, like, the guru plays the role of an expert, an all-knowing sort of almost plays the role of God, depending on which.
Right, and in this spiritual context, it's they're being the person that you want to be, or they're embodying.
They're also being the vessel for God to divine wisdom.
Yeah, or it's a transmission. Yeah,
and so there is
that part, yeah.
Some of these aspects, like we want people. There are many ways and moments in our life where we want someone else to be the expert and give us the answer. We want someone else to be able to.
That happens to me all the time.
Right. That's really nice. I like that there's a mechanic out there that'll help me fix my car, and they hold the knowledge and I don't.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like that's a perfect example of this relationship.
I happen to not worship them for their mechanical skills. I appreciate them and acknowledge them, and validate them. Hopefully,
microcosm it. Some people will they go to the mechanic like, I don't know what's going on, just do the thing. And I think that creates a system that's rife for abuse. I think right. I think that is a hard problem.
Charge you through the nose and
what?
Mechanics can overcharge if you don't understand.
Yeah, like they can definitely take advantage of you, or they can be honest. And the problem is you're not going to necessarily know which one's which. And that is in fact a very difficult problem to solve. Like this is a trust problem, which is in fact very difficult to solve. And I think that there are some ways of solving this. Right? So, there are some ways of helping solve it, right? Like
so I wonder if we can wrap in some of the no self stuff here. So when I go to a mechanic and I go, the mechanic knows what he's doing. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But I've gone, the mechanic has a strong self-knowledge of car, and therefore I shall...
it's just they have a knowledge of car.
I shall defer to person who knows about car. And so I've done a thing where I've made him, in my witnessing of him, solid enough to know the answer to the car problem. And a stronger sense of self on the topic of car wisdom than more of a mechanic.
They know the car problem, and they're going to take your relationship. They're going to value you,
right?
Like nearly as much as you should value yourself.
Right, but if I raise him up too highly, and I'm like, mystical, magical car man, will you fix my my vehicle? Or if I'm like, can you fix it? I'll pay any price, right? Because this is where it starts to be a problem.
And if you're not doing any research on your own, you're not like one of the ways to solve this is to know a little bit about cars. And another way to solve this is
to potentially and
to get second
thinking about maybe unhealthy versions of no self. If I'm like, I know nothing about car. I barely know how to drive it. Great mystical mechanical man knows more, therefore I am weak before the mighty.
Right. You're setting yourself up to be taken advantage of.
Right. And so there's a way in which healthy self, like it's called the no self-realization, but maybe it's more about healthy self and unself-realization. And obviously if I put the self into other people, I as opposed to having my own and then dissolving my own, or if I'm like, listen, you damn mechanic, you're trying to screw me over, and I just yell at him, like he's not going to do a good job either.
Right.
Like I said earlier with the birthday cake example, if it's all about me.
Right, that's where the no self I think is helpful for these things, because like you have to know exactly, like you can't have an ego when you're doing this stuff. Like when you're in negotiations, if you have an ego, it's not going to end as well.
I'd say you have a weakness if you have an ego, which can be taken advantage of or used to sway the.
Or you're gonna wind up screwing yourself. So like having that like no self where you like kind of let go and experience things as they are, and not get your sense of self-worth tied up into whether or not you can get a good deal or things like that.
And I would say that excellent negotiators can wait. They can sit and they can be like, let's negotiate this aspect, and then we can get to that and we can be like, okay, now I want to fix this bit, and I can just keep going until all of the aspects that I care about are resolved. And non-experts,
right? And that even that tactic requires a lack of ego to execute. And so I think that's probably like a lot of the no self as well is like. Like the problem is I'm using ego in like a negative way here, because it is a negative way when gets in the way of things that are important.
Right. So many ways in which egos and selves can go wrong. Wonder if there's any other really big ones that I haven't mentioned. I guess it's on the really strong and on the really weak is the two that I've really named.
Yeah, there's probably another dimension, would be my guess.
Well, there's self and other as well. So making myself really strong and myself really weak, and then in contrast, you really strong or you really weak. Or, you know, there's the we're all gods. And
that's interesting. Yeah, having other, like, how do other people show up on the scale as well? Would be, because if you have no sense of self, if you have a very weak sense of self, and then you have other people have a strong sense, or vice versa, then you're going to, it's not going to be balanced.
Right. Or if you believe that everyone has a really strong self, that may get complicated. Like, we're all gods here, someone's got to take out the trash. Or we're all peasants here, but what if it is Daniel's birthday? Like, it's his birthday.
Right. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because if everyone kind of has that view, then like you've kind of canceled out, and then like, what does it mean that we all have this strong or weak sense of self?
So that you named something really important there, where what is, and we talked about this with ask culture and guess culture and tell culture. It's important to know which one other people are in, as well as which one you're in, because if you're in everyone is kings and everyone is peasants, you're not going to get along.
Right.
Or the other way around, if everyone is kings and you're like, I'm not important. Like for example, if you're in a circling group or a conversation where many people in the room are like everyone matters, everyone deserves a voice, and you're like, I'm not important, I'm not going to speak, then you've by contrast you've rejected yourself. And they may like stop and try and listen to you, and you will be like, nothing to say.
Yeah, it's going to be weird when everybody's like looking at you expectingly, because you're a person and your voice matters, and then you're just trying to get away from that because that glare becomes too, like, that spotlight.
And so people who are healthy on these dimensions will be able to navigate, and like maybe they can turn down their spotlight while still paying attention gently. So that this is interesting. It's not stuff I really thought about too much. But yeah, like if you're, because like I am into this whole everyone is a person and has like there's a certain like minimum, I think, for people that when they show up. But yeah, sometimes I do ignore people on purpose because it does seem like they don't want to be stared at. Or so one thing I pay attention to is what people mean, and they may say certain words, but they may mean something else. Like if they are coming from a less important place and using the words like laterally, like I'm talking about the things that are less important and I'm less important, then I will pay attention to what they mean in reference to themselves. And if they're overly important and they use words of overimportance about their overimportance, I will pay attention to that lateral relationship they have with their words, and I will adjust. And first of all, I will adjust for the overrepresented down and the underrepresented up, and then I will. This is where I start getting stuck because I get confused about. I still need to have a preference. Like I need to decide who I want to hang out with, or like which one's opinion matters more, independent of who is speaking louder. And so there's a return to like, oh, I need to decide who to listen, who to validate the most, or whose opinions to take into account in this.
These are like social dynamics now that are showing up.
Right, and I want to be constantly navigating the path of what is the right thing to do, and recognizing the complexity of selves that I may be engaging with. You know, for example, if you're in a conversation with a family and you have a grandfather, a father, and a son, right? Each of those people have these different wisdoms on the world. And it's not that one of them is invalid and one of them is more valid. It's not that we should do what the grandfather says because he's the grandfather, or do what the kid says because he's the kid. It's that each of them has a different perspective and a different validity. that should be taken into account when moving forwards. And exactly how we do that may be different depending on the shape of the problem.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, there are not necessarily hard and fast rules, and these things take patience and practice. And
there is you brought in the social dynamic stuff. Like the whole time I was talking, I was thinking in perspective of the individual. But yeah, once you hit like social dynamics, because then you have to start worrying about other stuff. Because even if you want to be low ego, like even if you think like the healthy version for you is to be a lower ego, if other people are all being upper egos, you're gonna get stomped on.
Right.
And the other way around as well, right? If everyone's low ego and you're going high ego, you're gonna come across as like arrogant and pushy and
right. So there's a need for some sort of keeping track of that. There's a need for mindfulness.
Right. I think that's maybe where like the healthy dynamic comes in, is are you able to grow and shrink as needed?
Well, particularly because we're on the self and the no self-realization. I can't necessarily keep track of all of those dynamics, but what I can keep track of is where I am. So if I find myself important in this moment, or if I find myself unimportant in this moment, that's something that I can keep track of. And
like noticing, like, is everyone looking at you right now?
Right.
Or is everyone ignoring you?
Right. And what I can do from there is I can adjust for the dynamic that I find myself in as I notice how I'm responding to the situation.
Yeah.
And that's
that is
more manageable than trying to play God of the many perspectives.
Yeah, that is important, I think. Like that's like a key step. I think people will often like leave groups if they're in the wrong spot versus like taking the time to notice where they are, where everyone is.
So something that I try and watch for is phrase maybe like what needs to be said in this conversation, or
what's in the middle. Do you do that one as well?
It's like imagine that you're with a group of friends and there's someone who always gets teased, and they get annoyed and they leave the group, and then they try and pick you as the person to be teased, and you're like, wait a second, I don't like this. And what's going on is possibly that there's something about the social group and the dynamic that we need an outlet, or we need to like blame someone for this thing. And if you can hold that gracefully, or even if you can name it, maybe you can be transformative, but there's a need for an outlet or something.
I don't do that anymore. I used to like not mind being the scapegoat and stuff like that, but
right, but the phenomena of group is trying to make a scapegoat, maybe independent of the person that they have chosen. There's just a need to have a scapegoat, and then you can be transformative if it's all about yourself and whether you are or you aren't the scapegoat today. Then you can't make as powerful moves as if it's just, this is a phenomena that we are finding ourselves experiencing, and
right,
decide what to do from here.
Right, because like there is a thing of taking it personally or not. Like I think that is like when you notice group needs a scapegoat and you're the scapegoat at first you can take it like really personally, everyone hates me, and then you kind of move up to realizing that actually this is just the way the group dynamic works, is they need to be able to point their negative or whatever it is at someone.
And maybe if I can notice the scapegoat pattern and transform it, no one else ever has to be your scapegoat. This whole pattern can be released and resolved, and we can have a better social dynamic. Maybe people don't actually like making the scapegoat, but they feel like they're stuck in this loop.
Yeah.
Today is me, tomorrow is you. Like it's him. It's like
sometimes it's like that. Sometimes the group dynamic is that like the scapegoat just changes around,
but we don't have to do that. We can play better games.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It is an equilibrium, so there I think, but I don't love that stuff anymore.
All right, so I want to go for one final topic before we wrap up, which is how to investigate the no self, or the self and the no self, because they're both important. And I would say that so we can do the meditating on the breath. We can ask the like,
you and breathing. You're obsessed with meditation.
Fine, I'll just stop.
Now you're the scapegoat.
Yeah, amazing. It's good.
Okay, so you're meditating on the breath.
Many meditative traditions use the breath, so it's a great.
Yeah, it makes sense because it's always there, and there's always some agency, but some autonomic.
Also, the breath is kind of cool because it moves from outside the body to inside the body, so it crosses the boundary from exterior, or like the air in the room that I don't usually attribute to me, to interior, which I do usually attribute to me.
Yeah.
And so
astronauts have like their proprioception, like their sense of self includes their suit in the air and stuff.
Right.
Just like that's so like obvious to them that they could lose that at any moment.
Right. So that becomes a skill of being aware of the tone of the air and the feel of the room, and what branches into weird mystical energy territories, because it quite literally feels like it's in the air of the room, and so I can engage with it because I have a sense of self that extends into that space.
Yeah, because you definitely like this is like a weird mystical thing, but it's also a very normal thing where like even sports play where like the goalie is being the net, or like the hockey players are being the stick, being the puck, right? Like
yes,
their sense of self is extended to these objects.
Yes. So investigate where yourself is moment by moment. If it's watching the breath, if it's on the breath, if it's like certain bits of the body. If I'm like, as I get angry, suddenly maybe my hands are myself. Like, weird. This is like I'm suddenly more in my hands than I am, and I live more in my body than in the room, like, which is changeable and flexible. It just in the same way as I can be more on my voice than in my hands, I can be more in the room than on my voice, and there's a way in which most of us probably haven't visited what it's like to just be the room.
Yeah, I'm mostly like my sense of self is mostly outside me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Outside of the body.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like my like let's say my sense of self is in my where my consciousness spends most of its time. Is yeah.
Interesting.
My body just does whatever it does. Like it just does the thing it needs to do. Like I don't know. I don't feel like I need to be there.
So there's an exploration where you can deliberately go into the body and hang out inside.
Yeah, and I do that because I do tend to go a little bit too much on the outside, and so I do use meditation as a way of like connecting back.
Right. So I kind of want to mention a basic here, which is that even as I've been saying these few sentences, my sense of self has moved all over the place. Like it's this phenomena that moves moment by moment almost.
Yeah.
So if you're like, I can't find it, chances are you are not looking for the obvious thing that just keeps moving all the damn time.
Right. So this is I think this is what I kind of want to say before with the like complexity in the no self, where like we were talking about that self where it's like you're in your body, I'm like outside. That self, like that consciousness that jumps around, like it jumps around. Number one, there's the consciousness that jumps around from place to place, and like that is a self. And then there's all the places where it could be, is I think a different self.
So one thing that you can do is you can try and take a deliberate action. Like, I'm going to bake a cake. I'm going to walk. I'm going to sit down, stand up, and look at and examine where the self is as you take that deliberate action. And particularly,
I think a good meditation for this is to actually like focus on your breath. And so if you notice, noticing the breathing lets you like put yourself inside inside the breath, and then it's easy to find you.
So there's some of the slow moving martial arts, like a Tai Chi, has a nice flowing movement. You can do those if you do a repeated action like that for hours and hours. the first time you do it yourself will be here, like in your hands, and then it'll be like in your arms, and then you'll do it 10, 20, 30 more times. And then your sense of self will start getting bored and tired. And like 5 hours later, I don't know how long, I can't predict how long, but at one point it'll just give up. It'll just be like, it'll dissolve, and suddenly there will be no one. You won't be any of the movement doing. You'll just be sort of maybe the witness. I don't really know.
Yeah, I've had those experiences before, where it's like you're doing something and then like it just stops.
The doing keeps happening, but the doer self sort of isn't there anymore.
Yeah, it's almost like a dissociation, except not.
Maybe more relieving than terrifying.
It depends, right? Like when it happens, like it has happened to me like when I was younger, without like knowing what's going on, and there was like a certain sense of panic at that.
Right.
But then when I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of like waiting for these experiences to happen, and then there's that experience of like there's no one here.
It can be peaceful, I would say, as well.
It's extremely peaceful, but it's not like traditionally peaceful, because I'm not at peace.
It's more like there is peace.
Well, it's not that there's peace. There's just no lack. There's a lack of not peace or something. I don't know if this is what they're talking about, though. This might be a different experience.
Right. So imagine that, but like more of the time and more deliberately being able to like just switch into it and switch out of it as you felt. Like that'd be nice.
Yeah, I can't do that. Like that's
no, I can't. I don't know if I can do that. Depends on.
I can get qualities of it. Like I can up and down the qualities, but not like all the way like that.
There becomes a skill potentially of being able to navigate in and out, which I can't claim to definitely have.
Yeah, it's not really like it didn't feel like navigating in, because it just stopped. But like I didn't stop it, or maybe my past self did, but I don't identify with him anymore. So
there's a way in which probably early in our meditative journey we start as I am the thinking self, like I am the thoughts.
Yeah.
And to move from that to I am the body, I am the awareness, like it's a very I am the witness of everything. And you associate the self with different things rather than the thinker. It can be both relieving and confusing to not be the thinker anymore, or like not be certain that I am the thinker anymore. Yeah,
it's really scary at first, like, and especially like when you move into like, oh, I don't actually have to think if I don't want to.
I remember at one point I was meditating, and there's this common frustration that we start building metacognitive awareness. So I start building a skill of knowing if I'm meditating well or not, or knowing if I'm distracted. And then that turns into like the thinking voice, like chattering away, like we're doing well, like this is meditating, this isn't. And I'm just like, oh my God, why do I have this annoying voice telling me I know what I'm doing? It's also telling me that I'm doing all these things. And eventually I was meditating and I said to the voice, what am I going to do next? And the voice went, oh, we're going to get up and blah, 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 blah. And I didn't. And the voice kind of went, oh. And then I went, okay, voice, you have another try. What am I going to do next? We're about to do all these things. And again, I didn't. And I was like, oh, I'm not the voice. Like, and the voice is like really not, it's hard to get to a place where I could actually ask the voice a question and have it respond.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, it's like asking a loud room of people stuff, like many parts of me may answer. And so I had to be meditating and get quiet in order to be able to have that and have the voice go, oh. And like something fell away in that day in that meditation, where no longer did the voice feel the need to narrate or predict or insist on this is about to happen, because it realized that it was wrong in some way.
Yeah.
or this part of me realized that
that's huge. I don't think I've heard of this before.
Yeah, it was that's why I want to mention it, because it was such a fascinating experience.
Yeah, so with meditation then, it's when the voice is saying, you ask, what are you going to do next?
So my voice was
and see if it's right.
Sort of narrating every action of mine, right? And I was getting annoyed at the narration, and I was deep in meditation. And then I asked the voice, what am I going to do next? And lo and behold, it said, we're going to get up and eat food or go have a shower or whatever. And then it only took like 10 or 30 seconds of me not doing that to have the voice realize that it was saying things that weren't happening. It wasn't true. And like change the way that it was doing things.
You're being lied to by yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like there is a gap between cognitive and behavioral action. Cognitive intention and behavioral action. That part of me could not cross alone, which it thought.
Well, it's not necessarily. Yeah, it's not even necessarily.
Like it was like, we're meditating. I'm a meditator. I'm meditating, and then I was like, okay, smart mouth. What are we gonna do next? And it went, we're gonna get up and have lunch, and I didn't, Yeah. And that was it. That part of me that wanted to narrate realized it wasn't controlling the show anymore, or never was, perhaps.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is also kind of like a parts work.
I think I just got that one out of luck, really, but yes.
Well, yeah. A lot of this stuff is luck. I think it's just kind of recognized as well, where it's, the insights. When you do these things, you set yourself up for getting lucky.
Yeah.
That's a whole like independent happenings and stuff. That's a whole other.
Right. So that's been a huge overview of a bit more impermanence, a whole bunch of different aspects of self and non-self. Hopefully that gives people a good clue. And if you're an experienced psychotechnologist, maybe you didn't know some of this. Maybe some of these you knew, and others of them you're like, oh, that's an interesting take. And obviously we've probably missed the best ones, and that's your job as a commenter to like write us a message.
Oh yeah, guys, put in comments like things that you want to hear us talk about and stuff.
Yeah.
When we get them, like we'll review them and maybe do whole episodes on that. But yeah, I feel like this was a pretty good overview, like introduction.
Especially if you had never really yourself investigated no self. Here's a grand variety of aspects that go into it and why it would be interesting to investigate.
Yeah, these are a lot of things that could be called no self, and a lot of like different like contexts and approaches to them. Something else I wanted to say, just sort of as a disclaimer, is for this whole series, like that we've been doing all these things. If you go to the schools, they're going to tell you different things,
right?
And like that's just going to happen, and it's up to you. In my opinion, it's up to you to decide what makes sense or what's true.
So in the words of some of the things we've said today, identity, right? I am belonging to this school. You should hold the identity lightly. You should investigate who wants to belong.
Wow, well, this is psychotechnology. Like you're telling them to hold it lightly, but they might want to. 10 seconds ago, you said don't judge the guru, and now you're saying hold it lightly. Right, like because like this might be a thing where like some people might want to go in and abandon all the preconceived notions and just immerse themselves into these situations. And like that's, I think, in my opinion, that's something that you should be making that choice for yourself.
So I've had, in my experience, some schools of meditation, some schools of spirituality say, I am the one true path. All the other paths are wrong. You should stick to one path and stick to it. I have visited so many paths and learned so many lessons from all of them that I think what I'm coming around to is that they're all my path in some sense. It's not like being a Vajrayanist or being a Theravadaist or being a whichever religionist is the one true path. It's that my one true path has been the journey that I have taken, visiting, learning from so many different people and experiences. And I would encourage other people to also take a one true path of many colors, because your path is your path. rather than the one that this particular school of wisdom puts forward.
I think that's beautiful.
And it probably disagrees with many specific religions who are like,
it disagrees with so many of the stuff, right? Like this is your opinion, this is my opinion. But I think
so I speak from my own path as having enjoyed visiting many different other people's paths, other people's experiences, other people's wisdoms, and being able to learn from them.
I would like to other side of this, because it's like a psychotechnology essentially.
Yeah.
Of don't identify with a thing, but be a traveler or a purveyor of many. And I think there is, like, I actually agree with you, and like this is the path I walk as well, and this is the one that I like, and I think this does make sense, and I think this is the one true correct path. But there is a downside to this of like a rolling stone gathers no moss, in that if you're always moving, you don't build that like community.
Well, I also suspect that the wisdom to stop will also come. If one day I'm like, I've seen much of what there is to see, and my favorite things are A, B, and C that come from schools 1 and 2, then the other ones gave me some wisdom, but it looks like these ones are really the ones that suit me the best. And I'll get there if that is the one true path that I am on, then I have no doubt that I will find my way there.
Right.
And don't worry, I've been lost many times anyway.
Yeah, and getting lost is part of the fun, I think. But yeah, like it is a decision, and I think it is the correct one. But it is a decision, and that is for everyone to make.
Psychotechnologies live.
Woo!